Okay, so good night, good morning, good afternoon. I am Roberto Giugliani from Brazil. I work in Porto Alegre, in the very south of Brazil. I am a medical geneticist, professor at the Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul state, which is the southernmost state of Brazil, and work in the university hospital, which is Hospital de Clínicas. And so I talk about Brazil. Brazil is one of the big countries in terms of extension and the surface. So it's the fifth after Russia, Canada, China, US, and very close to Australia. So had some points in the Brazilian history that makes it a little bit different from the other Latin American countries. It was discovered by Portuguese. They tried to force the natives to work. They failed, so they start to brought slaves from Africa, and all the economy at the beginning was mainly extraction and some agriculture. This remained until the 19th century, when Napoleon invades Portugal. So the Portuguese royal family escapes to Brazil, and then it was a new era for Brazil. We start to have universities, libraries, theaters. So just in the 19th century. And that time, most of the countries in Latin America, they start becoming independent and become republics. But Brazil became independent, but remained a monarchy. And so it was a self-declared Empire of Brazil, and continued slavery until very late in the 19th century. And so they are mainly agricultural and extraction. And so the Republic just almost in the 20th century, in 1889, and remained politically very unstable until the 40s. So in 1945, we had the democratic elections and started an industrial cycle with public education. We had a left-wing government. These were some, I would say, some kind of golden years in 1945 until 1964. We have Brasilia was built, and lots of good things in that time. But then the 64, the military coup, baked by the US, we have the dark years in terms of politics, but the economy did do quite well for some time. And then 1988, democracy was reinstalled, the new constitution. And then we had the birth of our public health service. So this snapshot of Brazil. In Brazil, we have contribution of the main human groups from the Amerindians that were there when the Portuguese arrived, the Europeans, not only the Portuguese, but many people from Germany, from Italy, from many other places, and also the slaves brought from Africa. So we have a very miscegenated population with 47% declared white, but almost the same from what is called brown or pardo. They're very miscegenated, and also some black, yellow, and natives. But I would highlight the miscegenated group. Brazil today has 210 million inhabitants, just one language, everyone speaks Portuguese, has surface borders with 13 countries in South America, has a GDP that was world 70, now it's 12th because of the inflation and dollar rate very unstable, but experienced an economic growth in the last decades that is quite reasonable. And the per capita income is reasonable, but the human development index is not good. You see the gene inequality index is quite high for a country with such a economic power. So, and you see, and the inequality is illustrated in this picture. You see the on the right side, top class condominium in São Paulo, and in the left side, just the same neighborhood, a very poor residents. So this is very, you say it's very much what happens in Brazil. There's just very rich and very poor living very close. And but we made some progresses in mortality rate was decreased steadily along the 20th century, and now it's around 14 per thousand, which is reasonable, but it's better in the south than in the north and northeast, so there is inequality in this also. And the life expectancy also improved a lot in the last decades. Now it's around 75 years, but again, better in the south than in the north and northeast. And the public health system, is public, universal, free of charge, no specific contributions from citizens, maintained by the federal government with partial contribution by states and cities, relatively good coverage for primary health care. They have health centers, health care teams. It's a reasonable good service provided by tertiary care center, but it's deficient for non-urgent specialized care and for elective procedure. And I would say that rare diseases, most times they are on these conditions. So 25% of the population who can afford, they subscribe to private health insurance policies. Regarding genetics, I will say how it was in the past, and I say that when the new constitution was issued in the 80s, no specific reimbursement for consultations of genetic or metabolism, few tests covered by the public health service, just karyotype and screening tests for metabolic disease. Genetic consultations available only in university centers by non-medical professional, mainly in South and Southeast regions, and karyotype available in few centers. So the alternative at that time is medical genetic services provided by university hospital with funding coming from education and research, not from health budget. And this is what we established in Porto Alegre. You see our university hospital in the front of this picture. Porto Alegre has about 1.4 million inhabitants in the very south of the country. So we founded this service in 1982, some decades ago, and based on the patient care, training and education, and the experimental and clinical research. So it was a mixture of providing healthcare, but bringing money from research and education. And so we established sessions of clinical genetics, biochemical genetics, and cytogenetics, then start to establish international connections, started a medical residence program. We founded the Latin American Society of Inborn Errors of Metabolism and Neonatal Screening, was founded in Porto Alegre. Recognized in 1997 by Excellence Center, and also selected for special programs by the Ministry of Science and Technology in 2000. And in 2001, I have to say there was a major advancement in Brazil, that is the National Newborn Screening Program, created in 2001. At the beginning, it was just phenylketonuria and hypothyroidism, then hemoglobin disorders, and then cystic fibrosis. In 2014, it was updated, including congenital adrenal hyperplasia and biotinidase deficiency. And now there is a law in the Congress in discussion to include galactosemia, amino acids, and acylcarnitines, and SCID, SMA, and lysosomal disease. And this law may be approved. So there may come some improvement in the coming years. Well, in 2004, our service was designated WHO Collaborating Center, and in 2008 was designated Coordinating Center of the Brazilian Institute of Population Medical Genetics. And in 2009, there is an important decision to integrate in the public health system the integral attention to clinical genetics. This was the Ministry of Health designated issued this resolution and created reference centers in clinical genetics. But this law never was implemented, just a piece of paper. And so we had to start again, because this was a minister on the last day of he was the minister, he signed this law, but the new minister did not give any attention to that. And so it just took many years to have something in practical. In 2017, we are designated a reference center for rare disease by the Ministry of Health under the new law that provides reimbursement for support for a multidisciplinary team, reimbursement for consultations in rare diseases, for investigations, specific investigations, allowing 4 visits per year of the patient, everyone reimbursed. Also reimbursement for genetic counseling. We had lots of meetings in Brasilia to have this resolution, and a partnership between advocacy groups and academic people, pharmaceutical industry, and health authorities. And our hospital was the first to be accredited as reference center in rare diseases in Brazil back in early 2017. Well, our service, we have some information services that we provide for the country. One is the Hello Genetics. Hello Genetics is a telephone number that is call free, and any primary healthcare provider can call us and ask if see some patient with suspect genetic disease, can call us. It's one of the information services we have. We have some networks to support diagnosis, and I'll just highlight the MPS, mucopolysaccharidosis Brazil network. Also, call-free number. We have associated centers spread around Brazil. We are the coordinating center in the very south. And we provide diagnosis support, so the family goes to the affiliated doctor. He can collect samples, sent to us, and we process the samples. Then we provide the diagnosis, the report on the tests for this doctor, and he can manage the family according to the results. And this is provided free of charge, because we raise money from several sources, including donations from the industry, research projects from the government, the Ministry of Health, and many things. And we have reported this experience on these networks. Also have some activity in population medical genetics. To just exemplify one cluster, we studied together with people from Bahia state in Brazil. And then in this area, we identified many patients with MPS 6, which is quite rare. In that area is 1 to 4,500. And in general, it was 1 to 340,000, the incidence. So we found a cluster there. We signed a task force. We identified the mutation. And the most important, we started the community genetics program, bringing awareness and counseling to the population of that area. And it also started a newborn screening program specific for that disease in that specific area. And we already found several carriers that were in families that we can provide genetic counseling, and but no affected patients so far. So this is the end of my presentation, just to highlight some activities and some. In Brazil, we still have some challenge. There is, despite the last resolution by the Ministry of Health for Rare Disease Centers was issued in 2016, we have just 16 centers designated so far, less than the number of states in Brazil, very few. Also, few disorders in the newborn screening programs, and the access to diagnose and therapies is still limited. And because of this, we started a new initiative, this Genetics for All Institute. Is a non-governmental organization created to promote training, education, awareness in rare disease, and to bridge gaps to increase access to diagnosis and therapy. We have some mobile genetic. We send a task force to see patients in areas that are underserved. We go from time to time. We have the Hello Genetics that I just explained. We have also some activities educational to middle students. We have a prize for actions in expanding access to diagnosis and treatment of genetic disease. And I think the very important is a partnership we have with Casa Hunter, that is the House of Rares. And we are now building the first House of Rares in Porto Alegre. And will be a project for multidisciplinary patient care, clinical research, screening and diagnosis, training and education, also short-term accommodation, and but sure that Ariadne will talk more about this. So this is my very short presentation on Brazil and what our center has been doing. I will stop sharing my screen.
Obrigado,
I don't know if you want to make questions now or later.
Obrigado, Roberto. So I'll ask a first question, if I may. So on the last presentation before yours was on Panama.
Okay.
And I see a similarity between Brazil and Panama, and maybe something where we can learn from what happened in Brazil. So in Panama, they passed a law on rare diseases, but there is no budget and nothing is being done. I'm deducing from what you presented, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, that in Brazil at some point there was also a law passed on rare diseases that languished for a while, and eventually there was some action on it. Is that correct?
Yes, in fact, there is a law in 2009, but no practical action. And then there was a new law that was different from that in 2009 that was issued in 2014, and it became effective in 2016. Started to become effective in 2016.
And in 2016 is when there was a budget assigned to it, and there was action on it. Okay.
Exactly.
What?
Yeah.
So okay, so this is the missing link, I guess, in Panama, and it'll be interesting to see whether that also happened in other countries. What prompted the government to pass a law in 2009, do nothing, and then I pass a different law in 2014, and then do something? What spurred the government into actually doing something for patients with rare diseases?
Well, I think that in the 2016, we have a very strong participation on this project. So it was not just a law that was signed by the minister, but was built together, by the academic centers, by advocacy groups. There was the participation of health authorities from the states, so there was something that was built and there was also approved by the health councils in the states and in the government. So there was a more collective construction, I think.
Okay, so if I may, so I'm deducing it required action from multiple stakeholders to actually finally see some action. Is that correct?
Yes. This is the point.
And if you take a look at the chat, Gabriela Repeto asked you a question. I want to step away for a second and turn on the aircon here again, but I'll be back. But just take a look at the question.
Yes, Gabriela,
I can read it. Yeah.
Okay.
Or I can read it myself. Please. Yeah. It was just in the context that I think this is something commonly that happens in Latin America, that we self-declare our centers as centers of excellence. And I see that you have put standards and agreements on that. So I'd like you to ask if you could share your information on how those agreements and those standards and benchmarks were established, and how are they maintained?
Yeah, well, to designate a next reference center, we have to fulfill some criteria, and there are different ranks. So our group is on the top rank, that is reference center for rare disease. And if you do not fulfill all criteria, you may designate reference center for a specialized attention, that is, so you can focus on some disease or some procedures, but not on the more comprehensive group. So they have the, but the evaluation along the time is not well defined so far. So this is a missing part. For the implementation,
but if I may follow up, how would the criteria? No, just my question is, how were those criteria agreed on or developed? What does that work entail?
Yeah, this criteria is that the center has to have a multidisciplinary team, that the administration of the center should commit to maintain that team dedicated for the rare diseases, and we have to provide some tests, diagnostic tests, some therapeutic procedures. So also we have the conditions to provide the diagnosis and therapy. You are entitled to have some support from the Ministry of Health based on what you can provide to the patients.
So maybe we should go to the next presentation then. Is that okay?
Okay, I will share my screen because I will advance the slides from my end. And then let me introduce Ariadne. This presentation was supposed to be delivered by Antoine Dyer. Antoine Dyer is the president of the Brazilian Federation of Rare Disease Association and president also for Casa Hunter, that was one of these associations, but he had a personal problem at the last minute and asked Ariadne Diaz. Ariadne is a journalist. She is has a master in education, and she is the director of institutional relations of Casa Hunter, and she is also a council member of the Federation Febre Raras. So Ariadne, thank you sorry for the short notice, and thank you for agreeing to deliver this presentation.
And nice to meet you all. And I will try to replace Tony. It's not easy at all because he's a very experienced guy. And I believe he's one of the people in Brazil that know the best all the questions involved related to rare diseases in Brazil. Okay, so let's go. Can you go, Dr. Giugliani, please?
Yeah.
Next slide, please. So Casa Hunter, we used to present ourselves as a mix of people, curiosity, and research. And since from the beginning, we try to put together everybody concerned related to rare diseases. You know, we believe that in complex questions like rare disorders, we need to put all the stakeholders together, to put everybody together. So not even the parents, not even the physicians or researchers. We have to try to put together everybody to deal with such a huge problems, like such complex problems like rare disorders. So next, and I will talk very briefly, in a briefly way, about our 5 different areas that we use to work. We have this program called Day Hunter. Day Hunter, it's a program to help the patients and their families, but we used to make these programs in 4 different Brazilian states. And we put together, it's a partnership between Universal Hospital and Casa Hunter. We use the infrastructure of the hospital, and we bring our knowledge with people that is used to work with rare disorders. For example, physicians and physiotherapists, psychologists, dentists, that it's very rare, it's unusual, and it's very complicated to find dentists that are specialized to deal with rare disorders. So we did this program in 4 different states in Brazil: Rio de Janeiro, São Paulo, Bahia, and Giugliani. And continuous education, we have this place on YouTube, a channel dedicated to expose our classes on webinars. Every information that we have about rare disease, we put this in this channel, okay? Awareness, we do at least two different events, important events to work with awareness. We have the Brazilian rare disease scenario that we do at least once a year. And this is a very important opportunity to put everybody together, all that stakeholders that I spoke, the government, some political men from the left, from the right, from the center, and everybody together to speak about what is going on rare diseases. And last year, before the pandemic, we put 800 people together in a theater. You can see this in the second picture, and we have the presence of the First Lady of Brazil and the message from the Minister of Health. And we believe that only doing this kind of event, we can bring the attention to our question, our cause. Next. Clinical research, we have here Dr. Giugliani. We believe that it's pretty important to bring clinical research to Brazil. And we only can do this working close with the academy. And political policies, we have Tony here, these 3 pictures. It's 3 different moments. Tony used to go to Brasilia, our capital, at least twice a month before this pandemic. And it's pretty important to be close. Dr. Giugliani was talking about the newborn national neonatal screening program. Last month, we approved in the Congress an expansion of our program. So if we have to go to the Senate to speak with the senators. And if we approve this project, we're gonna expand our neonatal program and to at least 50 diseases, but it will be in a scale. It's a very interesting program. If you want to know more information about, we can speak later. Next, please. We're gonna spend much time in this slide, but I think it's important to say this is the path to access the treatment in Brazil. We have to submit to ANVIS and then CIMED. This is a committee that will discuss the price of the medicine, and then to CONITEC that will discuss the benefits in the quality of life for the patients. And we have in the next slide some information about Brazilian law that we have helping us to access these benefits. We have our national policy from 2014, as Dr. Giugliani spoke. Next, please. And here I selected, we have here some information about this law, the 3 critical points mentioned in this law that we have this responsibility is divided between the Ministry of Health, the states, and the cities now, and the municipalities. And each one has a different responsibility. And the Ministry of Health is also responsible to establish the PCDT. PCDT is the protocol where we're gonna find the recommendations for treatment. And also, if we have a prescription, a specific medicine, we're gonna find this in the protocol. And the third one that I think it's important to mention, to enabling reference centers. Now we have 17 centers in Brazil. Next slide, please. Oh, first I'm gonna talk about this law. We have this national law from 2014, and this other one, I selected here only 4, but these 4 laws they are very important to us because they define, for example, that we have a different treatment to analyze, for example, a request of a clinical research, or even to provide, for example, our political for gene therapy, for example. This resolution 2060, for example, Dr. Giugliani can speak very well about that, because this was a result of the effort between our institution, Casa Hunter, and Dr. Giugliani, and their contacts, for example, with the Pennsylvania University, to help us to construct a law and to help the Brazilian government to understand how to deal with this. That is brand new for the government, and they don't have this experience. So if you want, after this presentation, more information about this law and even the links to access this law, it will be a pleasure, okay? Next. Okay, I'll bring this slide because I think it's important to present you our reality. We have this huge country, we have 70 centers, and we don't have even one center in the north of the country. As you may see, it's a 0 here. And in the center of the country, we have 3 different centers, but the 3 of them is located nearby our capital, Brasilia, okay? If you go to the northwest, we have this huge concentration of people, poor people in this area. We have only 5 centers, and they are located only in 3 states. The south and the southeast is completely different from the rest of the country. And if you go, for example, in these states, we're gonna find at least 1 center in each state. Okay, next, please. We don't have time to discuss this slide at all, but I think this is pretty important if you want, if you have time to study this slide. You can see the claimants by incorporation in Brazil, and you can see that the patient, for example, we did 6 claims. Oh, sorry, I'm late. I will try to finish this in 2 minutes. We can see that we have 6 claims, and all they were attended, okay? They are incorporated. Next. Okay, Dr. Giugliani, I will run. Oh, so this is only examples of incorporations, but we need more. Next. And unfortunately, we still have in Brazil this scenario, this horrible scenario of judicialization. And this scenario is not good at all for no one, even for the government or the industry, and especially for the patient. Next, please. I'm almost finishing. Next, please. And as you asked for some ideas to share with different countries, I believe it's important to speak about the Febre Raras. It's a very important initiative. We have now 57 institutions from different parts of Brazil, and together we were much more stronger to go to the government and make our requests. Okay, next. And this is an example, for example, of the members of Febre Raras. They are very experienced associations. More than 35% of this group are institutions with more than 15 years. And this is pretty important for us because they are very experienced and they help a lot in this discussion. Next. And to end, we are now very concerned about the construction, the finishing this construction, this initiative of Casa dos Raros, that bring 2 institutions. We have Casa Hunter and we have the Genetic for All Institute working together to make this first reference center in much more expanded way, understanded way to treat rare diseases. Next. Now, this is a little image of the Institute. I believe that to end this presentation, it's important to say that is a private initiative. We don't have any money from the government to construct this building. And this is really important because after we do this, we are ready to construct a new one in São Paulo. And our idea is to have one center like this in each state of Brazil. It's gonna be a long way, we know this, but this is our dream. And sorry for the delay.
No problem. Obrigado, Ariadne. So the question I would have is, clearly Brazil, like many other countries, is a patchwork of federal government responsibilities and state and probably even local, I'm not sure. So how were they brought together in Brazil to create this successful program on rare diseases?
I believe this is very complicated, you know, because as Dr. Roberto told us, we have this law in 2014. We have 2 years to make this law become a reality. But even though we still have huge problems, for example, the gate of entrance of this patient is the municipality, but the municipality is not ready to receive this patient. So it's pretty complicated to find a diagnosis or even to suspect that this person have a rare disease. When they discover or suspect that they have a rare disease, they have to communicate with the state because the units of the states are prepared to treat this patient. And this is a very delicate system because you need to have the diagnosis that is pretty complicated, and after that to have the access of the treatment. That's why, as I told you in the beginning of my presentation, these complex problems demands working together, everybody. We have to talk with the government, the industry, the academia. We have always worked together to put this, to make this a reality, you know, to take off the paper and bring it to a reality. It's not easy at all.
Okay, there is a question in the chat from Javier Guerra. I'll just read it out. Can you talk something more about Febraras Federation?
Okay. Febraras is brand new, you know, only have 2 years, but we believe that this is a really important movement to make the government look at us in a different way, okay? For example, Tony now has an agenda, official agenda with Conitec. So once a month, as Febraras leader, he talks with Conitec about the submissions that are now ongoing or our needs, specific needs in this moment for people with rare diseases. And it's a very complicated scenario now. You know, we are facing this pandemic that put everything out of order. It's not easy at all to talk about a specific agenda like rare diseases, but I believe Febraras is dealing with this scenario in a positive way. The fact that we still have this agenda once a month talking with Conitec, it's always a miracle.
Okay, thank you, Ariadne.
Thank you.
Any more questions for either Roberto or Ariadne? Want to take us to the next steps, Steve?
Okay. Well, first, thank you to Roberto and Ariadne for the presentations. And so I think we will terminate this part of the discussion, but then we would like to continue with the steering committee to be present here to talk about a few subjects that just to sort of assess where we are and where we're going with respect to next steps. So next week or 2 weeks from now, we will have presentations from Ecuador and Chile, and we'll be sending out information about that session several days before the scheduled date. So with that, I think we'll terminate this part of the discussion and then move into the steering committee. If that sounds good. Okay.